Hello, everyone. My name is Sunny Chung. Thank you very much tuning in to my podcast show. What I'm trying to do is try to share the knowledge from expert in real estate industry, so you can learn alongside with me. Um, Usually, my show is go longer, but today I want to narrow down to like 40 minutes at this time with respect to our guest. Today is my privilege to have Mr. Brandon Meyer with Meyer Law Group. It's an attorney who specializes in compliance and EB-5 investor that want to immigrant to United States. He also a founder and the CEO of EB-5 Choice and an author and speaker on immigration law and EB-5 policy. Brandon, it's a pleasure to have you on here. If I miss anything, and you feel free to introduce yourself to my audience in about two or 1 minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sonny. Good to talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and your audience about these immigration investment topics. The only thing I want to add is just, Meyer Law Group has headquarters San Francisco, additional offices in New York, Charlotte, San Diego, Ho Chi Minh City, and Guangzhou. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, and with
Well,
that, let's just jump in.
you are a busy man, Brandon, and I appreciate your time on this. I'm very interested in the EB-5 program and to understand how this program work. If you could explore and explain to our audience or a listener unfamiliar with EB-5 program, can you like walk us through um, in your knowledge step-by-step process and from initial investment and how to receive a green card from this program?
No, absolutely. So EB-5, which stands for Employment-Based Fifth Category of Overall U.S. Immigration, requires an investor to invest $800,000 or $1,050,000 into a qualifying EB-5 project. Now, what accounts for the difference in investment amounts? The $800,000 for projects that are in designated rural, high unemployment areas or infrastructure projects. $1,050,000 investments are, basically, not infrastructure, not high unemployment, and not rural. Pretty much, virtually all the investment action is at the $800,000 level. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. Like you get the same thing at $800,000 and $1,050,000. Why spend the extra $250 if you don't have to? It's, I know you're in Dallas, Sonny, so your gas prices are cheaper than mine here in Northern California. But the way I analogize that is, okay, there's two gas stations on the corner. One selling gas for $4 a gallon. The one next to it is selling gas for $5 a gallon. Which one do you stop at? You stop at the one that's $4 a gallon for the, same thing for EB-5. So the investor invests in a qualifying project. There's two ways that primarily investor can get a green card through EB-5. They could try to set up their own EB-5 project, have the job creation responsibility on their shoulders. That's the so-called direct EB-5. Or the other method, which is far more popular, is called the regional center approach. And so that is these third-party groups go to the U.S. Immigration, apply for a license to develop EB-5 projects. They get approved for a license. They set up projects. The projects go through a project pre-approval process. Then they go out and raise money. Pretty much in the same way that the $800,000 is where all the action is in EB-5. Same thing on the regional centers. Most investors go the regional center route, partially because it's a lot easier to get approved the process than if people try to set up their own EB-5 projects. So once you have the investment amount and once you have a method, direct or regional center, then for the individual investor and their families, which is one spouse and any children under the age of 21. I do have to specify one spouse. Occasionally we have people that have more than one, so you have to pick, unfortunately. And three-step process. So the first step of the process just establishes eligibility, primarily that one, the investor is invested in a qualifying EB-5 project, and two, the most critical component of any EB-5, especially for an investor out of Vietnam or China or any market for that matter, is documenting the source of their investment. It comes from clean money. It's called source of funds. Without good source of funds, the whole entire EB-5 initiative falls apart. So first step, establishes eligibility, good project, good clean source of funds. Second step of the process is where the investor and their family actually receive U.S. green cards. They receive them on what's known as a conditional basis for a 2-year period initially. Why 2 years? Well, because the U.S. government, the investor's investment has to lead to creation of 10 or more jobs. So that second step, and just having the green card good for 2 years, means that after 2 years, government forces you to come back to the third and final step of EB-5, which is where you, primarily the project, show that it actually met the job creation requirement. And if it did, then, the so-called conditions are removed and everyone receives 10-year green cards and you've graduated from the EB-5 program.
That's pretty neat little program it's been out there for a very long time. From your experience, what part of the process creating the most confusing or delay for investor, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, so definitely is the so-called source of funds process. Because depending on what country you do business, the documentation may be a little bit incomplete. The business practices may be different, let's just say. Also difference, quality of tax documentation may not be the same as it is here in the United States. So the biggest problem that investors always have is with the source of funds, and also depending on what country they're coming from, China, Vietnam, they have issues with transferring money out of the country to the U.S. to make the EB-5 investment. And so that's known as path of funds. You have to document how the money went from you to the project in each step of the way. And so basically, yes, source of funds, path of funds, and also to a certain extent selecting the right project are the most critical and difficult issues that investors face. And so how does an investor work around those? They have to work with experts. They have to work with people who have experience and know what they're doing. That's the only way.
Yes, they got to make sure to hire the right people, like for yourself especially an EB-5 attorney. So let's say when the source of fund is ready, what type of due diligence should the investor perform before committing the funds into a real estate based on EB-5 project?
Yeah, it's really hard for people to do appropriate due diligence on say a hotel project in Tennessee when they're living in Shanghai or Da Nang and can't come to the United States to tour it themselves. So that's where working. You could get if you have family members in the U.S., you get them involved, but actually that's counterproductive most of the time. We call that the sister-in-law in San Jose or brother-in-law who lives on Bel Air Avenue, Houston problem. Whenever the sister-in-law in San Jose gets involved, that's when everything goes haywire. So, I understand the deference to friends and families, but that's a lot of times the kind of the most harmful thing that overseas investors can do. But then you understand the conundrum. I live in Da Nang, how can I evaluate a project in Tennessee or Miami, wherever it is? And again, that's just goes back to working with the true professionals who have the knowledge and experience and trusting them to get you through the process. So I guess really that's the hardest part, is picking the appropriate partners to guide you through the process. Because if you don't, then the source of funds, the path of funds, and the project selection will all be less than ideal. And that was actually a big problem. I mean, it's still an ongoing problem in many markets, China and Vietnam in particular. I'll just highlight Vietnam, for example, that, 10 years ago, I guess about 8 years ago, Vietnam was the biggest market for EB-5, eclipsed China and India. But all those investors a good number of those investors from that time ran into problems and we're still trying to, help them. But at that time, the people who were doing EB-5 in Vietnam basically had no idea what they were doing. I mean, it's only the nicest way to put it. And as a result, it created huge problems for those investors: denials, delays, unhappiness, loss of money. And it's really a shame. And so these days, when I go to Vietnam, I spend more time trying to help people who ran into problems. People that started with us all got through no problem. But I spend most of my time going over helping people who started elsewhere and ran into serious problems and trying to get them through the system the best we can. So
That's good, because sometimes you got to give a foreign investor a peace of mind when they invest the capital. The way I look at it, it doesn't matter you from here or you from overseas. Capital is still capital, because they're hard-earned money. They want to have a better life for themselves. That's why they want to migrate to the United States, right? So based on what you just shared on this, just to keep the investor peace of mind for security reason, and with the complying with the U.S. CIS rule, what type of structure that give them transparency, like reporting, escrow structuring, third-party auditing, play in protecting investor interests?
Definitely, and all of those are critical. So on the project offerer side, there's many groups out there that have been in this business for a long time and know how to structure an EB-5 deal that works for the investor. And those groups will all have those elements that you cited, because they know that the investor not only wants to feel comfortable at the time of investment, and one of the ways that you do that is they show, transparency to the success of their prior projects. But given that, this is going to be a 5-year process, plus or minus, to not only get through the immigration, but to get the money back, reporting, audits, all those elements that you cite are very, very important. So, as someone's evaluating talking to a potential group, that's definitely a legitimate question to ask a project is, do you have escrow? Do you provide audited financial statements annually? Like, do you have a real-time kind of reporting portal to show where the funds are going? Give us updates, periodic or real-time, on construction progress. And, do you have a construction camera that we can access at any time to see where the construction progress is? And those answers should be easily yes to all the above. And so, if any group lacks those, then that's potentially a potential red flag. And the EB-5 law actually requires funds administration now, but so the way you differ, so everyone has that because they have to, but it's a question of, are you using a third-party funds administrator, or are you kind of like doing it yourself? And so, in my opinion, going that extra step, hiring a third-party accounting firm or banking firm that are out there in this industry is what the U.S. government really wants you to do, and provides more measure of security than people who are kind of doing it themselves.
Interesting. This what I've been understanding about EB-5 is pretty much helping foreign investor to get green card, immigration to United States or any country they choose
Hmm.
to go, particularly on the return of their money. If because it, pretty much EB-5 program give from a real estate standpoint is pretty decent amount for the capital,
Yeah.
and there's a fluctuated of the return for the EB-5 investor. Um, how based on your experience, does the investor feel uncomfortable if the developer give them more return, or they think it's scam because what the market have programmed them in the ways that this how much your return is.
Hmm.
Um, can you expand on that? Because I'm kind of like
Yeah,
trying to understand.
absolutely. So yeah, that's a great point, Sonny. And this is a conversation I have with potential investors 2 to 3 times a day when I say, oh, the established groups that have been, been in EB-5 for many years and have many successful projects under their belt. They're offering, quarter point, a half point a year. Whereas I found this other group that's, offering 2.5, 4.5%. And I'm like,
Right,
okay, yeah. And then I tell them, well, then it's just like everything else in investing. If someone's offering a quarter point and someone else is offering 2.5 points, then why is one offering a return that's 10 times more than the other? And answers obvious. The risk factor is higher. And so, whenever you see an EB-5, not always, but more often than not, whenever you see a group that's offering an above market return in EB-5, then that's basically their one and only selling point to the market. They just want to grab people who
right,
just are chasing return, and then not really looking under the hood beyond that, because oh, okay, well, I'm getting 4%, 3%, and I'm just going to stop there. um, One of the things that has been proven time and time again in EB-5 is when people are chasing one or both of the following things, the outcome is generally not is a bit suboptimal. And the first one is if they're chasing faster processing times, saying, oh, well,
okay,
this project suddenly got all these faster processing times, so I want to jump into that. And like, whoa, hold on a second. What about the fundamentals of the project? I don't care about that. I just want it faster. Okay, that's going to
right,
produce bad outcomes. And the second one is when people are chasing return in EB-5. So if you chase faster processing and chase higher returns relative to what the established players are offering, you know, you're taking on additional risk, and you're elevating your chances of disappointment in one or both areas, and it's just not worth it. Like, I understand the investor's perspective. Okay, I'm giving money to effectively, the thought process for many investors is like this, and it's perfectly understandable and justifiable, which is, okay, I'm giving $800,000 of my money, significant portion of my life savings, to someone I don't know, and entrusting them to do the right thing with it, and my family's future is at stake. So,
mm,
and then you want me to have it tied up in for 3 to 5 years, and I have no control over it, and then only get a quarter point to half point per year. Like, that sounds like, a really bad deal. And it is, and if it doesn't work. But it's like, if you want to make money, don't do EB-5, invest in Apple stock or Nvidia
right,
stock. But that's not why you do EB-5 to begin with. Like, you can buy, 10 million shares of Apple, 5 million shares in Nvidia if you had enough money, but guess what? It's not going to get you a green card for you or your family. It's just not. And so, but EB-5 will. So that's why you do EB-5. It's not because you're going to make a high return. The ROI is the green cards for you and your family, which are almost incalculable. So the perfect EB-5 outcome is always the sum total of the following three. Number one, you and your family get your green cards, which has a huge financial benefit. 2, you receive your 800,000 back in a reasonable amount of time. And 3, whatever that nominal return is, quarter point, half point, 1 point per year, that you receive that as well. You get those 3 things. That's what you're really setting out to do, why you're doing EB-5 in the first place, because those green cards are so valuable to you, and even more so to your children, which is basically why most people do EB-5 to begin with. I mean, yeah, it's for them, but it's primarily for their children to secure, put their children on a trajectory to a, more safe and secure life going forward.
Yes, mainly they do for the children, or and then for the next generation have a better education, and also receiving the process of citizenship. I think that's very emotional attached to it. So they don't care much about the return on their investment, as especially they do have money or they are very successful businessmen in their countries. That lead me to question about building trust for, let's say, Vietnamese, one of immigrant over here. How can a U.S. attorney, developers, and capital partners build trust with family who looking at EB-5 program at the pathway for their children education and the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the only way you can really do it is to, at the beginning, spend lots of time in the country, talking to people, and then developing your reputation from there as you deliver success to people going through the process. That's really the only way. And so that's one of the reasons why, for example, for Vietnam, I'm going to Vietnam now for EB-5 for close to 15 years now. And the first couple years were kind of difficult because, one, at that point, EB-5 was really new. So they needed to develop a knowledge base in country about what EB-5 was and what it could do. But yeah, it was really just about people keep seeing you around repeatedly and developing confidence that, okay, this guy's here for the long run. And then as you start, having documentable success to your clients, then it really builds from there. So it's really just a factor of, the only way you can build trust is through time. And, it's one of the reasons too, I can't be there all the time. So for me, having the office and having trusted local staff is invaluable, because my country manager, who's Vietnamese, can meet with people, really develop that next level of trust and confidence building with people that we meet and talk to.
I could not put it better than you can. Trust and staff and especially your attorney, and if people come to you, ask for assistance to help for their family. So look at your career. What motivate you to actually program, Brandon, and what do you try to leave behind in this industry that you see?
Sonny, that was a really important question. Unfortunately, you kind of cut out. So do you want to repeat that for me again? Sorry.
Yes, I apologize. So just look back in your career, right? What motivate you to help EB-5 program? And what kind of legacy that you hope to leave behind in this industry that you see years when you get this?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting how I kind of got in the EB-5 to begin with. So, I kind of got my start, kind of in the greater world, through China as a student in China 30 plus years ago. And then, I come out of school and I get a job at a law firm in San Diego. And, that was in 1998. And so EB-5 at that point was at really a low point. There wasn't much of it. And, the office managing partner of that law firm, it was mostly a firm that kind of did work visas for high tech, and still does, for high tech companies. But they would occasionally take on EB-5 cases. And so no one in the office wanted to work on the EB-5 cases. They didn't want to develop the expertise. It was, it was just no one wanted to touch them. And so basically, I was asked nicely to handle the EB-5 cases that came in at that time. Basically, I
Mm,
drew the short straw because no one else wanted to do them. And so, so I do one, I do two, I do three, kind of develop, and it slowly grew from there. And then like EB-5 went on almost like a 10-year hiatus in like the early 2000s, and started coming back slowly like 2006, 2007. And there at that point there was only a few people that had ever actually done EB-5.
mm-hmm.
And I didn't have much experience, but I just had more experience than 90% of the people out there. Plus, I
Right.
had the China in country and language experience, and that's where the market was at that point. So basically, that's how it grew. It was like, basically luck. Like, hey, do this EB-5 case, figure it out, and then fast forward nearly 8 years, and you've done some EB-5 cases, and China, great. And then it just went straight up from there. And then it was in 2011. For 2011, yeah, no, I'm sorry, 2013. Someone suggested, hey, why don't you? No, I'm just sorry, Sonny. It's been so long. Yeah, it was 2011
Okay.
where someone suggested to me, because in those days all the EB-5 action was in China. Lots of people, myself included, would spend a lot of time going around China developing that market. And then a friend of mine suggested, wait a minute, why don't we go down to Vietnam? Why don't we go check it out? Hear that there's interest. And I was skeptical. A lot of other people were skeptical. I actually wrote an article about, the kind of skepticism and dismissive attitude that many people in the EB-5 industry had at that time about whether or not EB-5 Vietnam was a market. But anyway, went
Right.
down to Vietnam, checked it out, and realized that there was a lot of potential there. And and it just grew. So that so 5-6 years later, Vietnam eclipsed China as the biggest market. And just as an aside, I wrote an article. The article I wrote about people laughing at me for going to Vietnam. And one of the things I always talk about is like certain people that laughed at me. Like I would laugh back when I would be in country and I would see them waiting for a taxi at the Park Hyatt or the Sheraton. I'm like, what are you doing here? You told me I was an idiot for coming to Vietnam, and now you're here too. So does that make you an idiot as well? And that sort of thing. So, I really got in at the beginning because no one else was really there at that time, and it's grown since then.
Mhm.
So what do I want to achieve and achieve in terms of legacy? I mean, I try not to think about that because I did have this other senior practitioner call me a few years ago. He's like, Brandon, I'm concerned about my legacy in this field. I'm like, okay, well, when everyone's gathered around your coffin at some point,
Mm.
I would see it as a failure. Be like, oh, Brandon's office put together a really great IA-29. I'd rather have people say when that time comes, oh wow, he was a decent human being and did great things with his children and was just an overall decent guy. And to the extent that people in the industry feel that as well, that I was honest and treated them well and did what I set out to do on their behalf. That would be fine with me. That's all I could really hope for. And and
I
I
think
guess I'm
that's
doing a good job because whenever I go back, people seem to be happy to see me. So so I think I'm
I
on
think that's
track.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, if people acknowledge you and then appreciate what you're doing for their family and deliver the result, they will
Hmm.
welcome you with an open arm. When
Yeah.
you think about your work, right, your personal life and your professional life, how do you want to be remembered by your client, your peer, and your family?
Clients and peers are basically, hey, I tried to do things the right way. honestly, ethically, and I was able to deliver results for people. That's, to boil it down. Yeah, that's what I would like to, hopefully that's the professional legacy I can leave behind.
I think that's any professional in our field as an act of service. That's what we want to know for, right? Brandon, thank you very much to be on the podcast. I have one last bonus question we didn't share with you.
Absolutely.
And then this one is going to be a curveball, but
Okay.
it's kind of my closing statement. I learned it from a different podcast. I thought it's great to kind of improvise it and put in my show. Let's say today is your last day on this planet, and what you do and all your hard work and all your knowledge you can take with you, and there's nothing about you on this planet whatsoever. However, to leave three main things behind for the next generation, for who actually want to be EB-5 attorney, your peer, your family, your friend, your colleague. Three things you can leave behind to share with people in your circle and to other people. What would that be?
First one, don't overpromise and underdeliver. Second one, don't chase the easy money. Number three, be honest and straight with people, because if you BS them, eventually it will catch up to you. And then at that point, you've lost all your credibility.
Golden rule. Brandon, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure with you. And if anyone watching the show or listening to Brandon at Meyer Law Group to discuss, you have EB-5 program, you have a family looking to immigrant to the United States, just have a conversation with him. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show.
Thank you, Sonny. Thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Thank you.
All right.